Are you confused by all the EU sustainability reporting regulation updates? In this video, I will try to summarize the most important events of 2024. But I will not do so alone. I interviewed 7 experts in their field of expertise and asked them for a short summary of the most important events of this year. And in this video, I will try to put everything together in just a few minutes. Before I start, AtlasZero is helping sustainability managers to find the right solution for their needs. We have a database with over 1,000 solutions, and around 250 of them help with topics like CSRD, EUDR and CBAM. And we recently launched a search that helps companies to find 10 solutions that might be the right one for them completely for free. I will put a link below, so check it out if you like. Now, let's start with the summaries. Over the course of the year, I had a couple of conversations with Maria from Palau. She has a lot of experience with the CSRD, so I had to ask for her opinion.
Hey everyone, let's take a moment to reflect on 2024 and everything that happened in the world of CSRD. It's been a year of learning, progress, and let's be honest, a few challenges along the way. The year kicked off with some big news. EFRAG released the draft XBRL taxonomy, giving us all a sneak peek into the future of digital tagging. This was our first real taste of how sustainability statements would need to be structured and reported in a more tech-savvy way. Then, the first big puzzle piece fell into place. By the end of Q1, companies like Ørsted were leading the way in publishing their first annual reports inspired by SRS standards. These reports gave us an exciting and sometimes surprising look at how different organizations were interpreting the framework. But of course, questions kept piling up. On the SRS Q&A platform, stakeholders started sharing their interpretations, diving deep into the details. And the more we learned, the more questions seemed to emerge. Then came a big reality check. PwC released their study on CSRD implementation, showing us that across the board, we were all struggling with the same issues. It was a bit of a relief to know we weren't alone, but also a wake-up call to double down on finding solutions. Next up, another puzzle piece. EFRAG gave us guidance on mapping AR16 material topics to disclosure requirements. It left many of us wondering, why wasn't this mapping clearer from the start? But hey, progress is progress. And speaking of progress, this was huge. We launched the first ever CSRD community. Finally, a space where we could ask questions, share ideas, and have real, deep conversations about the challenges we are all facing. Meanwhile, some deadlines slipped through the cracks. CSRD transposition deadlines came and went, but some countries still haven't implemented the directive 6 months later. It's a reminder of the varied pace of progress across Europe. Then came a much-needed resource. The EU Commission released a set of frequently asked questions on CSRD implementation, answering some of the burning questions we all had. It wasn't perfect, but it definitely helped. But not all news was straightforward. Early double materiality audits revealed some real challenges. Auditors were contradicting each other and struggling with limited assurance practices. It's clear we still need more alignment here. Thankfully, another big milestone came through. EFRAG released the final version of the XBRL taxonomy, putting us on the track for full digital tagging, hopefully by the end of 2025. And finally, some controversial news to close the year. At a recent conference, President of the EU Commission hinted at potential omnibus legislation. Imagine CSRD, CSDD, and the EU Taxonomy all rolled into one. It's just speculation for now, but 2025 could bring some major challenges. And that's 2024 in a nutshell. It's been a year of incredible progress, with so many lessons learned.
Actually, Maria had a lot more interesting points to mention that I couldn't include in this video. So if you're interested, reach out to her. I will put her contacts and the contacts of all the other people I interviewed down in the description. But one thing she mentioned I would like to highlight: the transposition of the CSRD. The CSRD was introduced on the European level, but it's still up to the individual member states to implement the regulation. Earlier this year I talked about this with Ian from Datamaran, and now he gave me an update.
The deadline for member states to transpose the CSRD was July 6. It is now about 5 months after that, and we still have 3 European countries that have not yet started the legislative process of transposition, and 13 that are in varying stages. The furthest along is Belgium, that's completed the process and just awaiting publication. At the end of September, the EU issued letters to each of these states asking for an update on the transposition process and gave them a 2-month period to respond. That has just passed, and we'll see if that helped to spur along any momentum for those remaining member states. Now, for companies that are operating in these jurisdictions, it may seem tempting to postpone implementation of the CSRD, but ultimately that is the binding regulation and what companies will be obligated to comply with. The unknown at this point is what the enforcement mechanisms will be to ensure compliance, but do get ahead of any of that and embrace the CSRD and this new approach to thinking more holistically about corporate sustainability. So things to watch out for moving into 2025. To add to the fun, European Commission President recently announced a potential omnibus regulation, which would look for consolidation of the CSRD, CSDDD, and EU Taxonomy to try to cut down on some of the red tape and find more streamlined processes. Still unknown what that actually entails or if they'll proceed. There have been some vocal member states looking to reopen negotiations around some of these. Germany, for instance, still looking to reopen the CSRD. And we'll see, where all of those chips fall as we move into 2025. So what we recommend is taking a proactive approach to regulatory monitoring, ensuring that you are conducting appropriate horizon scanning, looking at the sustainability related regulations and voluntary initiatives that can impact your company, and figuring out how to stay ahead of the regulatory pressures that will continue to mount as we move into the coming year.
This topic will definitely develop over the next couple of months. If you want to stay up to date, make sure to follow Ian and his team. I also had the opportunity to interview Felipe, who consulted EFRAG when drafting the ESRS. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, so broadly speaking, I'd say that EFRAG had been put in a very, very difficult situation years ago, like 2021, 2022, when they were asked to deliver on sustainability reporting standards within a very short period of time, standards that should have already been developed under the NFRD, but weren't developed, I think also for political reasons. And now it was done in very few years compared to its, I guess, sister or brother, however you want to call it, financial reporting, which had decades to evolve. So underfinanced and understaffed, EFRAG had sort of prevailed against the odds, and I think there were in spite of there being numerous stakeholder groups that wanted to see it fail. And it is exactly the same stakeholder groups that wanted to see EFRAG fail that are now lobbying really hard behind the scenes and very publicly against the ESRS for them to be repealed, cut to pieces, with all sorts of reasons on bureaucracy or not. I think it's another discussion on whether these reasons are valid or not. I don't generally think so. So the situation remains volatile. I can't exactly specify on what's ahead in the next few years, but in theory, what we should be doing, we should be just charging ahead and then adding the sector-specific standards because they make it easier to do the materiality assessment. Yes, that can also entail a bit more disclosure requirements for some firms that have a lot of impacts, but that's then very well justified.
I believe Felipe mentions some very important points about the CSRD being political. Maybe this at least somewhat explains why it's so difficult to keep up to date with all the different sustainability regulations. If you want to learn more about this, make sure to follow Felipe on LinkedIn. Another topic that is closely related to the CSRD is the EU Taxonomy. Sometimes it seems like the EU Taxonomy gets less attention, but it's also of crucial importance. I talked to Joanna from Factlines, and here's her summary.
What were the updates on EU Taxonomy this year? Well, 2023 had been a very eventful year because in June last year, the Commission decided to publish an update, significantly increasing the number of economic activities that had to be assessed under taxonomy. So far this year, the updates have been of a different nature. So ESMA, the European regulator, has made it one of its top priorities to scrutinize taxonomy assessments, also in connection to CSRD. Just last week, a semi-official news came in stating that the Commission might go forward with creating an omnibus regulation that would effectively merge CSRD, EU Taxonomy and CSDDD. It's not entirely confirmed yet, but it would be huge.
If you want to learn more about the EU Taxonomy, make sure to follow Joanna. Despite this being complicated enough, there are more sustainability legislation than just the CSRD and the EU Taxonomy. The EU CBAM picked up speed this year, and I talked to Gabriel from CBAM, who summarized all the important events of this year for you.
So this is the year when CBAM really got started. The first CBAM reports were due at the end of January. Compliance levels with that were pretty light, but over the subsequent quarters, understanding of the system got bedded down. And in particular, in October, we started to have to put actual supply chain values into our CBAM reports for the first time. This was a major undertaking by tens of thousands of companies, very difficult to do. A lot of businesses thought that it would be delayed, but the European Commission just pressed ahead, and now we have to get actual values for CBAM data. The next step will be 2026 when we have to actually pay taxes. Outside of Europe, UK CBAM is going ahead. We've had that confirmed by the new government, and there has been a lot of pushback around the world about EU CBAM, including a pretty major bust-up at COP26. But the EU is absolutely pressing ahead with CBAM, and it's going to be a very big year next year with lots of new guidance coming out.
If you want to learn more about the upcoming guidance, make sure to follow Gabriel. Similar to the CBAM, but not as advanced, is the EUDR. Recently, there was a lot of confusion about the EUDR and its delay, and I participated in a webinar from BankQ about this topic. There, Tom gave some insight.
So originally, the regulation was set to take effect December 30, 2024, which is short than 4 weeks from now. However, due to the pressure from business, government, and the concerns were raised about the complexity of the regulation, as well as the digital readiness of the EU and the Traces tool, the European Commission proposed a 12-month delay to have more preparation time. I think we're all aware of that proposal. There was a vote on the 14th of November, and the vote actually went through, so the delay was voted. However, during that vote, there are also a lot of changes, amendments proposed by the EPP, and there were negotiations back and forth with regards to these amendments. So as of yesterday, actually, the negotiations have reached a conclusion, which is it's positive. So after months of debate and attempts to amend the regulation, the EPP has ultimately failed to secure any substantive changes. So they tried to water down the regulation by introducing no risk categories and also put a lot of other amendments with regards to traders, etc. However, final negotiations, and the news came out yesterday that the EPP itself pulled this proposal, and now only the 1 year postponement of the EUDR will be applied.
Check out BankQ if you want to see the whole webinar or just learn some more on the EUDR. One thing I learned this year is that while all the companies are complaining about the regulatory burden, the suppliers are standing for an at least equally big challenge. Therefore, I included Ramia, who knows the supplier side in Uganda very well.
Hey there, my name is Ramia. I work with Pluto's Coffee Group, and today I will be speaking to you about the impact of the CS3D on producers, especially in developing countries. The CSRD is about to change the game for global supply chains. EU companies won't just be responsible for their own operations, they'll be held accountable for human rights and environmental violations across their entire supply chains, upstream and downstream. This creates a trickle-down effect, as EU companies will pressure their suppliers, especially those in third world developing countries, to comply. Small producers will then need to align with these requirements to stay competitive to avoid losing these contracts. Producers will also face higher compliance costs, including investments in traceability systems and technology, in order to demonstrate due diligence at every stage of production. This means from farm to export. For many, this will be a challenging but necessary shift. In high-risk areas where governance and oversight is weak, non-compliance could mean total exclusion from the EU market. Companies may avoid working with suppliers from these regions, cutting off vital access to one of the world's largest trading blocs. Additionally, new bans on products linked to forced labor and other violations will further threaten non-compliant producers, potentially impacting entire industries reliant on the EU market. These legal and financial pressures will ripple through entire supply chains, leaving small producers in developing countries vulnerable without adequate support and capacity building programs.
If you want to learn more about the supplier side of sustainability reporting, make sure to follow her. Sustainability reporting is not easy. There are different regulations, and the current political shift is definitely not doing sustainability any favors. With the AtlasZero podcast, we are trying to do our part in interviewing the right experts and sustainability managers. To make sure that our content stays relevant, please comment below what topics we should focus on, and we will look for the right people. As always, thank you so much for your time and attention. If you want to support us, please follow us and like this video. It helps us a lot to reach more people. Thank you very much and see you very soon.